whose work focuses on combating gender-based violence and crimes against women and children, especially in our poorer areas. Good afternoon, Karen. Welcome to the SABC News Desk.
Thank you very much, Keshni.
You've just heard the clip before by our senior reporter, Karen Pillay. How prevalent are cases like these, Karen, where rapists get off on bail and then vanish, and in some cases will go on to reoffend?
Keshni, offenders, perpetrators definitely reoffend given the opportunity. There should be a no bail for any perpetrator of sexual violence unless the state has the resources or mechanisms in place to guarantee the protection of the survivor. If bail is granted, the perpetrator is often placed back into the same home, the same community where the victim resides. And this becomes untenable for the victim. We've seen that. Restraining orders are not enough because families of the perpetrator should be held accountable and must become part of the protective measures for the survivor, not the survivor's family. Often we see that the state doesn't have the resources such as tracking devices or a leg band, armband of the perpetrator. So they have no idea what the perpetrator is doing when they cannot track the perpetrator. And this perpetrator will go on. It doesn't become opportunistic. It becomes the fact that they've done it once, they've got away from the law, and they can do it again. Had we had sufficient measures in place to prevent perpetrators or to stop bail on perpetrators, we would not have had cases like the one with Courtney Peters, with many other children that have been raped and are now left traumatized and will continue their lives as traumatized adults.
A current secondary victimization often coming through where the victim, whether it's a woman or child, is sometimes bullied and stigmatized by the very authorities who are designated to task, who are designated to serve and protect. How do we begin to address these very disturbing levels of insensitivity?
For me, I think what we've seen is that the very justice protective measures that should be protecting survivors are the ones that cause the secondary traumatization, because they don't understand how they should be managing such cases. And if we can say, let's bring them into workshops, let's do. But if we do not have dedicated units in police stations, in the justice system itself, that cares for survivors, that understands how to handle these cases. Maybe, I would advocate for a gender court or GBV court, a separate GBV court that specifically handles these cases. Then we are going to continue to see these cases falling by the wayside through lack of evidence, with the victims or survivors themselves withdrawing, and because of fear, because of the secondary victimization. And you will find these perpetrators are going largely
Karen,
they have not been held accountable.
On that point of a lack of evidence, in your line of work, how does the lack of cohesion between the SAPS, pathology and social services serve as a barrier to the successful prosecution that we need to see to get the perpetrators behind bars?
So often social services, thank you, Keshni, often social services or the social workers themselves are assigned to a case. So they will assess the perpetrator, they will then assess the survivor, and they then take these cases to the court. Should the perpetrator be put into a rehabilitation program, the social worker is supposed to assess. But because of the lack of resources and because of the lack of cohesion, this often does not happen. Sometimes a social worker is so overburdened that they will actually have maybe half an hour with the survivor, or they don't have enough time to get the correct facts from the perpetrator. All of these things are critical elements in ensuring that justice is served for the survivor. And if we don't have collaboration, we don't have cohesion between them, we don't have a thorough understanding of the cases and working together from the beginning, we're going to find that perpetrators are not held accountable, and they go scot-free.
Karen Pillay, thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk. Karen Pillay is an independent development practitioner and gender rights activist joining us on the line from Johannesburg. Let's move on. Our chair